Hello again, gamers. Welcome back for another episode of Grokking Battletech. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be telling you how to grok the Wasp. So I want to start by giving a big thank you to one of my regular viewers, Sam H., for requesting that I cover the Wasp in an episode of Grokking Battletech. So Sam H., this episode is for you. Now, before I get too into this, I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. There's also a link to my Teespring store. You can get some cool Board Game Captain merch, t-shirts, mugs, etc. And there's a link to my Patreon if you're in a position to and would like to support my channel. All right, so the Wasp. The Wasp is one of the original old school mechs that, actually kind of predates Battletech because it was based on one of the anime designs. Now, the Wasp is a little light, 20-ton mech, a bit of a harasser, fast but not super fast, so it does have some vulnerability, and its armor is generally not very good. So we're going to go over a lot of the different versions of the Wasp. I'm going to tell you which one is my favorite and why, and I'm going to give you a custom version designed by my own personal mech design firm. I'm going to give you a recommended mech warrior for the Wasp, and I'm going to give you a lance I built for my favorite version of the Wasp. So to start with, let's start by going over quite a few. I'm going to go over most of the versions of the Wasp to give you an idea of what we're looking at here. So we're going to start with the WSP1, a very standard version of the Wasp. This is a Star League era version. It's got 585 movement, which actually makes it even slower than some of the later versions. Most of the later versions usually have 696. 585 is really terrible. Is not very maneuverable for a light mech, especially one that only has one medium laser for its firepower. It's got 10 single heat sinks because it really doesn't need anything else. It's never going to overheat. And its armor is just abysmal. It has 6 armor on the center torso, 4 on the head, 4 on the side torsos, 3 in the arms, 3 on the legs, 3 and 2 on the rear torso sections, respectively. The only good thing about this mech is that it comes in at a bargain basement 314 battle value, but in reality, I would say spend your battle value on something else. This version of the Wasp is awful. Next, we're going to move into the Wasp 1A. So here we upgrade to that 696 movement, which is a significant improvement. Still not great, but it is enough at the full running or jumping to get that +3 difficult target modifier, which is nice. Better than nothing. Now this one has a little bit of a better weapon loadout with an SRM2 and a medium laser. Its armor is also a little better. We have 6 on the center torso, 4 on the head, 6 on the side torsos, 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, 4 and 2 on the rear torso sections, respectively. Still nothing great. It's also very cheap, though, at 384 battle value. This one I could see myself taking as a harasser mech, especially in the Succession War time period, where you could keep it a distance until you're able to get in behind enemy lines and start messing with them, maybe with some Inferno rounds on that SRM2 and the medium laser, just, to destabilize your enemy lines, and then, occasionally kick someone in the legs and make them take a piling skill roll. So for the Succession War era, as affordable as this one is not a bad addition. The next one we're going to talk about, I think, does the harasser role even better, though it does increase the battle value a little bit. This is the Wasp WSP1D. So we still have the 696. We still have the 10 heat sinks. We've got 6 armor on all torso sections, 4 on the head, 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, 4 and 2 on the rear torso sections, respectively. But we've upped the firepower to have 1 medium laser, 2 small lasers, and a flamer. So this one it gets a little more multi-role. With that flamer, you can actually hunt down some infantry when playing combined arms. Also, it's much better at harassing in the rear, causing a bit of heat and a bit of damage, and maybe kicking someone again to get that piloting skill roll going. The next version, the 1K, ups the armor a little bit, but has some very substandard weapon loadout. We've still got the 696 movement and the 10 heat sinks that are pretty standard for most Wasps. We have 7 armor, though, on every torso section. Not great, but better than the other versions we've already discussed. 5 on the head, 5 on the arms, 6 on the legs, and 4 and 2 on the rear torso sections, respectively. But its weapons loadout is just 1 machine gun and 1 medium laser. Again, not bad for hunting down infantry like the previous one with the flamer, but Really not great. This is not one I would actually recommend using. The next version is the 1L. So this one has 6 armor on all the front torso sections. It's got 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, 4 on the head, and 4 and 2 on the rear torso sections, respectively. We maintain those 10 single heat sinks and the 696 movement of most versions of the Wasp, but we swap everything out for an SRM4 and 1 ton of SRM ammo. Which means you can choose to either do a little bit of damage, a teensy bit, or do a little bit of heat spike, but not both. Again, the best benefit of this particular mech is that it's fairly survivable in the Succession War time period, where there's not a lot of pulse weapons on mechs, and also not a lot of really long-range weapons. You can run around the rear, and also it's dirt cheap at 335 battle value. Now, the next version we're going to talk about is the 1W. Again, maintaining the 696 movement and the 10 single heat sinks. We've got 6 armor on all the front torso sections, 4 on the head. We have 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, and 4 and 2 on the rear torso sections, respectively. This is my favorite Wasp. And the reason the 1W is my favorite Wasp is, in my opinion, this one does the harassing in the rear the best. So why is that? Well, it's armed with 6 small lasers, which now the thing is, yeah, it's not going to hit anything at any level of distance, but again, the whole point is you outflank your enemy, you keep at a distance until you can get in behind them, then you run in, you jump in behind their lines, start jumping from mech to mech right in behind them, unloading with your weapons and kicking them to get a piloting skill roll, and maybe trying to get one of them to turn around and shoot at you and show its rear to your guys who actually have better firepower downrange. Now, with these 6 small lasers, you actually have lots of chances to start peeling off that rear armor. Also, this could be used to, pick off at some infantry or some lighter vehicles. Again, also very bargain basement price at 373 battle value. This is a very affordable mech. And specifically in the Succession War time period, the 1W is usable. I would not use it in a later time period because that 696 movement is just, in my opinion, not really enough to be survivable once you start having a lot more mechs with LBX autocannons, with pulse lasers, and with longer range weapons. But in the Succession War time period, this one is the best that you're going to get out of the Wasps, in my opinion. Now we're going to start moving forward in the time periods. The next version of the Wasp we're going to discuss is the 1S. Now the 1S, the first thing I want to mention about the 1S that I really actually quite like about the 1S is that it takes advantage of both endosteel chassis and ferrofibrous armor to reduce some weight to be able to get some more things on this mech than we've seen in a lot of previous versions. We maintain that 696 and trademark 10 single heat sinks that you see in most Wasps. The armor is 7 on the center torso, 6 on the sides, 6 on the head, 5 on the arms, 6 on the legs, and 2 on every rear torso section. It is armed with 2 small lasers, a medium laser, and a flamer. It's not bad, but for the clan invasion time period where you do wind up getting, like I said, a lot more interceptor type weapons, this will have some issues in that time period. This would have been a great mech for the Succession War time period. In the clan invasion time period, it does have some issues, but overall, I do still like it, and at 423 battle value, it's fairly affordable, and it is one I would even take in the clan invasion time period. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is the 3A. 3A as in Alpha. So now, this is a Jihad era version. We change the movement significantly, reducing its basic movement, but adding in improved jump jets to have a 588 movement. Now, that 8 jumping capability is huge. It is very useful. This is great. It's got armor where it's got 9 on the center torso, the full 9 on the head. First Wasp we've seen with full 9 on the head. 8 on the side torsos, 5 on the arms, 7 on the legs, and 2 on every rear torso section, respectively. We've got the 10 single heat sinks, and it's armed with only a single medium pulse laser. So here's where you have a bit of an issue. It can still harass fairly well, and jumping and firing that medium pulse laser helps to reduce the extra added difficulty to hit from jumping. So this one actually is not bad, and is for a Jihad era version of the Wasp, one of the few I would actually take in that era if I were to play Jihad more often. The next version of the Wasp we're going to talk about is a Civil War era version. It is the 3L, the WSP-3 Lima. Now, this one is a 696 movement, 10 single heat sinks. It's got 8 armor on the center torso, 7 on the side torsos. Then we have 6 on the arms, 7 on the legs, 9 on the head, and 3 and 2 on the rear torso sections, respectively. Now, for weapons, we have a single rocket launcher 10, a Guardian ECM suite, and an ER medium laser. So this goes into this kind of doctrine of starting to figure that it's probably not going to survive that long, so maybe put one-shot weapons on it, like the rocket launcher 10. It's not bad, but there is a Stinger that kind of does this job better that has 2 rocket launcher 10s. This one just, you fire that one rocket launcher 10 and then all you're doing is disrupting your enemy with the Guardian ECM suite, especially if they're, have a C3 network or a lot of Artemis 4 systems and, pinging them with the ER medium laser. It's just okay. Really, in the Civil War time period, it's not that survivable. Next, we have a Clan Invasion era version, the WSP-3M. This version has, again, the 696 movement and 10 single heat sinks, but we're reducing the armor back down. We have 6 on the center torso, 5 on the side torsos, 4 on the head, 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, and 2 on every rear torso section, respectively. This thing will not survive long, and it is armed with only a medium pulse laser and an SRM-2. It's very affordable, but it's garbage. I would never recommend using it. The next version is another Civil War era version. This is the WSP-3S. Now, the 3S gets into a more interesting role because we've got a tag on it, so you're going to use this to spot for, either artillery if you're playing advanced rules or semi-guided missiles and standard rules. This is a 696 movement Wasp, like most of them. It's got 10 double heat sinks to keep it cool, which is, a rarity, but, possibly needed because it has 2 ER medium lasers, a Guardian ECM suite, and a tag. So you can disrupt your enemy, you can light them up, and you can harass them. This becomes a kind of a multi-use tool. It has 8 armor on the center torso, 6 on the sides, side torso, 6 on the head, 5 on the arms, 7 on the legs, and 2 in every rear torso section, respectively. Again, I would still play it cool with this one. It's a little more expensive. It gets almost 600 battle value. It's at $595. You really got to keep your distance, get around behind the enemies, and start lighting them up from behind, lighting them up for those semi-guided missiles and such, because, again, in Civil War time period, there's a ton of mechs that if you close the distance in their front arc, they're going to tear you apart. This still has no tissue paper and still only the 696 movement, which is a maximum of +3 target modifier for your movement. Not great, but not bad either. I could see myself using this in certain scenarios. The next version of the Wasp we're going to discuss is the 3W. This is a Clan Invasion version. It has 696 movement. It has 10 single heat sinks. This is kind of an upgraded version of the 1W that I like so much because we have 4 small lasers and 2 small pulse lasers. But the armor is terrible on this one. We have only 3 armor on the head, 5 on every torso section, 3 on the arms, 4 on the legs, and 1 on every rear torso section. Even though this is sort of like an update of my favorite version of the Wasp, I would rather take my favorite version of the Wasp over this one. The only really appealing part of this, other than the pulse weaponry, is the fact that it's even cheaper than the 1W at 342 battle value. Now, the next version of the Wasp is a Jihad era version. It is the WSP-7MAF. That is Mike Alpha Foxtrot. So this one's a little interesting because it comes with a multi-missile launcher 5 and an ER medium laser. It is also interesting because it ups the movement significantly with 8-12-8. So this is becoming very different from what we come to expect from a Wasp. It also has double heat sinks, 10 double heat sinks. But in order to fit all that in, the armor is still pretty lackluster. We have 6 on all the front torso sections, 4 on the head, 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, and 4 and 2 on the rear torso sections, respectively. But this one can rely quite a bit more on its speed and maneuverability to stay alive. You can jump around from forest to forest. You have the multi-missile launcher, which you have ammo, both LRM and SRM ammo for. So at a distance, you can jump around and fire, small clusters to harass, and once you can get in the rear, you can get a little closer and fire off SRM ammo at the rear armor and start picking away at the rear armor. This one is actually a really decent Jihad era version of the Wasp, and one I actually quite like. The next version we're going to talk about is another Jihad version. It is the WSP-8 Tango. This one is a not as good but similar role to the previous one, the 7 MAF. This version has the 696 movement of a lot of the predecessors, but the 10 double heat sinks of the MAF. And it's got a multi-missile launcher 3, a light PPC, but better armor. It's got 9 armor on the head, 9 on the center torso, 7 on the side torsos, 5 on the arms, 5 on the legs, and 2 on every rear torso section, respectively. Generally speaking, even this better armor is not great. And if something properly connects with you, it's going to tear you apart. I'd much rather have the higher target modifiers of the WSP-7 MAF than the lower target modifier numbers and the better armor of the 8 Tango. So I'm not a huge fan of that version. Next, we're just going to quickly touch on 2 Dark Age versions. We have the WSP-3K. This again drops back down to the 696 movement of the older Wasps and the 10 single heat sinks. We have fairly decent armor though. We've got 8 on the center torso, 7 on the side torsos, the full 9 on the head, 6 on the arms, 7 on the legs, and 3 and 2 on the rear torso sections respectively. Its weapon loaded is actually pretty decent with an MRM-10 and a medium laser. So this is kind of a version that you can better do the original tactic of keeping your distance, getting around the rear, and then closing in and harassing them in the rear. But the 696 movement really just doesn't cut it by the time you get to the Dark Age, in my opinion. So I'm not a huge fan of this one. I'd actually rather use some of the Jihad era versions in the Dark Age than that particular Dark Age variant. And the last one we're going to talk about is the WSP-3P. It has 711-7 movement, which is, has that all-important getting the 1 more on the target modifier and max movement in every type, which is, really important. You get up to that +4 difficulty to hit you. It comes with a rocket launcher 10 and an ER medium laser, 10 single heat sinks, and, better armor. It's got 9 in the head, 8 on the center torso, 7 on the side torso, 6 on the arms, 7 on the legs, and 3 and 2 on the rear torso sections, respectively. Again, a bit lackluster for this time period. I would have preferred multiple rocket launcher 10s if we're going for the all or nothing, just close in and unload on somebody kind of feeling. Because once it fires that rocket launcher 10, you've just got a single ER medium laser. Not great. So the Wasps are a bit hit or miss with me. There are some of them that I like. There's some that I like quite a bit. There's a lot I would never take. But my favorite, again, is specifically the WSP-1W, because in the Succession War time period, I feel this tactic is actually feasible because of the lack of good interceptor weapons on mechs, as well as the lack of really long-range weapons. You don't have a lot of the big long-range weapons back, like the Gauss rifle or the PPCs, etc. So because of that, I feel like this one can survive long enough to get in behind people and then close in, and the 696 is actually not bad for that. So that is my favorite. But let's discuss a custom version. So I wanted to take the 1S, which was the version that I was referring to that first used ferrofibrous and endo steel to reduce weight and improve the armor. But I wanted to take the 1S and I wanted to give it kind of a weapons loadout much more similar to the 1W to get the best of both worlds. A lot more weapons with a much better weight savings in the structure and armor, so it can get a little bit better armor. So my own personal mech design firm, KIWF, named after the last initials of its first 4 founding members, but affectionately nicknamed Kill It With Fire by its fans, have created the WSP-1S KIWF, which is made to take the best of both the 1W and 1S and put them in a single package. So basically what I did with this mech was I took the 1S and then I removed all of the weapons from the 1S and replace them with 6 small lasers and a medium laser. So the idea here is that this can do what the 1W does, but even better. So unlike the 1W, who has, 5 armor in the center torso, 6 on the sides, 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, 4 and 2 on the rear, this one has the better armor loadout of the 1S, where we've got 7 on the center torso. We have 6 on the side torso, 6 on the head, 5 on the arms, 6 on the legs, and 2 on every rear section. And then we've got a weapon loadout even better than the 1W with 6 small lasers and a medium laser to even harass at medium range while you're on your way in. Now, I do like this version, but what I don't like about it is how much it increased the battle value, because it brought the battle value up to 476 battle value, which in my opinion is too much for something that still could go down with one really decent round of fire from even a medium mech that's able to catch the Wasp in its crosshairs. So for my lance, I will be using the 1W. I decided to make a Succession War era lance. This is going to be a 5,000 battle value Succession War era lance for my Wasp. And before we get into that, though, I'm going to tell you what mech warrior I recommend to use in the 1W. Now, I would not normally recommend you take a mech warrior in such a cheap, expendable mech, but for the purposes of this exercise, I had to pick one. So I just chose to take Gendios Baramba. Now, Gendios Baramba has gunnery skill of 4, piloting skill of 3, so the only thing that's really improved is the piloting skill. There's a reason for that. I'll explain it in a minute. But generally speaking, you are reducing the risk of your opponent giving massively increased stats to one of their mech warriors, one of the much bigger mech warriors, because the only thing they're going to get to increase is the piloting skill. In the Succession War time period, the risk is less because there aren't a lot of super melee mechs, because you don't have hatchets on mechs yet, so you're not going to be able to, your opponent won't be able to give this increased piloting skill to, say, a Berserker or an Axeman or something like that. But at the same time, they could still give it to just a 100-ton beast of any kind, like a Atlas or a King Crab, and have them kick with that incredible piloting skill, and that could be an issue. So you're going to have to be careful of that. But the ability is a 2-cost ability, so this is a mech warrior to use if you are playing 2-cost mech warriors, and it has a speed demon ability which gives you +1 movement point to running, but you can't fire your weapons when you do that. If you're playing with sprinting, it can actually get +2 movement points while sprinting. Now this is really important because +1 movement on running is enough to get you up to that +4 difficulty to hit you, which is huge. It's a big boost. If you can move that full 10 hexes, you can't do any turns, of course, or go into tough terrain. But if you run a full 10 hexes, you're going to have a +4 difficulty for your opponent to hit your Wasp. And that is a huge advantage over the Wasp just running out there on its own. So now let's go over the lance that I made for this Wasp with that is being piloted by Gendios. So the Wasp, again, is the 1W with all of their small lasers. And of course, again, they're going to get around the side. They're going to move at high speed with their sprint ability. With their speed demon ability, and then they're going to close in the rear and harass and kick with that improved piloting skill to cause piloting skill rolls to whoever they're hitting. If they can make a 100-ton mech fall down with a little itty-bitty kick from a Wasp, that could be amazing as everybody closes in and unloads on that 100-ton mech. Now, to back them up, the first mech we have to back them up is the Highlander HGN 733P. This is a 353 Highlander jumping, like most of them are. It has 2 medium lasers, an LRM-20, a PPC, and an SRM-6, and a ludicrous amount of armor. We've got 41 on the center torso, 28 on the sides, 38 on the legs, 30 on the arms, full 9 on the head, and 17 and 10 on the rear torso, respectively. This is basically going to be your Lance Commander, who is going to give some covering fire to your Wasp and other mechs that are trying to get closer, being able to kind of stand back and hit at good range with that PPC and LRM-20. But if something gets close to it, it can also unload with the SRM-6 and the 2 medium lasers. Next, we have the Victor VTR-9S, and you heard that right. We have fit a second assault mech in a 5,000 battle value lance, and the reason is because of how cheap the Wasp was. Now, this one, this Victor has not great armor, but it has 464 movement, an autocannon 20, 2 medium lasers, and an SRM-6. So what you want to do with this is also hide it behind terrain until you're able to jump in at point blank range and unload with the AC-20 and the SRM-6 and do a ton of damage. The armor on this is a little weaker with 28 on the center torso, 17 on the sides, 20 on the legs, 15 on the arms. We have 11 and 8 on the rear torso sections respectively. Be careful. This one is a bit of a glass cannon for an assault mech. And finally, we have another, and I don't know if you noticed this, but the theme I went with here is lots of jumping mechs. We have another jumping mech, and it is a heavy mech. It is the Guillotine GLT-4L. This is the version of the Guillotine armed with a large laser, 4 medium lasers, and an SRM-6. So this thing can jump around and get in close and unload with tons of firepower to find the holes made by the bigger weapons like the Autocannon 20 and the PPC, with all those medium lasers and the SRM-6. And it has fairly comparable armor to the Victor at 27 on the center torso, 22 on the side torsos, 20 on the arms, 22 on the legs, and 12 and 8 on the rear torso sections respectively. So there you have it. That is the lance I would make for my favorite version of the Wasp to fight in the Succession Wars. I think this could be a very fun lance to play. It remains to be seen how competitive it would be, but I think it could be very enjoyable, and that is the most important thing. It is a little weird to be putting, of course, a mech warrior on such a tiny mech, but it might work out because of how cool it would be to get in behind your enemies and harass them with the Wasp. So there you have it. Let me know what you think of my choices in the comments down below. If you have any requests for mechs for me to cover in future episodes of Grokking Battletech, feel free to request them in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.